So by the end of this video, you'll have 5 tools from mindfulness meditation to feel happier, increase your sense of well-being, and manage negative thoughts and feelings. So it's said we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Many of those are either pointless or negative. So pointless being repetitive, the same conversations with yourself over and over again, or negative judgment towards yourself, towards others, towards your situation in life. And really changing that over to positive thoughts, feelings, actions can be done through mindfulness. Many people, when they think of compassion and kindness and positivity when linked to meditation, think of loving kindness meditation or metta, but that is an active cultivation intentionally of producing positive thoughts and feelings, which I have another video on. But for this one, we're trying to compare together mindfulness and kindness and the benefits you get from the actual mindfulness practice itself. So I hope that this can change the quality of your conscious experience, because many of us should and can be happier using some simple practices. So let's get into the first one, which is a compassionate place to notice thoughts and feelings from. So this compassionate place of awareness or noticing, I came across from someone called Jack Kornfield, who popularized Buddhist meditation and mindfulness by bringing it over from India and Southeast Asia with people like Jon Kabat-Zinn and Joseph Goldstein. And essentially he says that mindfulness and compassion and happiness are interwoven, and he calls it loving awareness or kind attention. And it's essentially that mindfulness is the non-judgmental noticing of the contents of consciousness, whereas judgment or analysis or overthinking the contents of consciousness, be that sight, sound, smells, tastes, touches and thoughts, is inherently negative or pointless, as we said, which isn't mindfulness. So where I would go with this is this place of loving attention or kind attention is the container for the mind, and then everything else is within it. So if you are feeling negatively or judgmental or any of these things, they're appearing in the mind. They're not the base level of the mind. And this was a real light bulb moment for me. It's that, so if the inherent nature of the mind is kindness and compassion, if you can notice in a mindful and loving way, then any negatives or judgment are just more appearances. And if you can notice them from a kind and compassionate place, then there's sort of no end to how this skill can be useful. If you're feeling negative and doubting or feeling bad or in a bad mood, moods, thoughts and feelings can all be noticed from this prior state of kind witnessing or kind compassionate loving attention. And then if more negatives come and doubt why this is even practical, or no, the mind can't be this loving place of attention because I feel so bad, that's just more thoughts. And every time you can just notice those thoughts and feelings from this prior condition, which is inherently kind. One little analogy that might help with this is if you were to receive bad news from a friend, a close friend or a family member, how would you react? Would you immediately spout out something negative back, or would you take the information with kindness, pause, and then give something positive back in return? And that's the sort of skill that you can be cultivating here. Having this kind place of compassion to notice from, then react from or respond from. And there are some of the tools we're going to go into next. So having this place that's always available of positivity as a sort of meta skill is where I'd start. And then we'll go on to the second tool, which will be noticing negative thoughts and feelings and meeting them with positive thoughts and feelings. So the second tool is responding positively to negative thinking. So once you've received negative thoughts or feelings from this kind and compassionate place, this prior condition which we mentioned in the first tool, you can then actively flip the script and get on your own team and take this scenario of the negative thinking. Maybe you're having self-doubt or self-criticizing thoughts. Notice those, Give them space using mindfulness. Notice they're just thoughts appearing in the mind. You've met them from this kind place, and then you just ask yourself, and this will eventually, you won't need to ask yourself, it will eventually become habitual, but you say, what's the opposite of this scenario that gives me more power, more strength, more resilience? What's helping me in this exact scenario? It's the opposite thought. And then you introduce those thoughts. So it might be thoughts of self-belief, thoughts of kindness for myself, for other people, not the thoughts that aren't doubting and negative and judging. So you're flipping the script, but you're using mindfulness to give you distance and creating the basis to then introduce those positive thoughts. And this is in real time. This isn't a practice like we'll get onto next, where you're actively sitting and trying to cultivate these feelings. You're noticing what's happening in real time, introducing the complete opposite, and mindfulness is the tool to allow us to be able to do this. Otherwise, the alternative is just being lost in these thoughts and going round in these cycles of thoughts and feelings and thoughts and feelings. But we break the pattern, then we flip the script and introduce the positives. So if you're liking this so far, it would really mean a lot to me if you could like and subscribe. It would mean a great deal. And let's go on to the third one, which is intentionally, formally cultivating positive thoughts and feelings. So the third method is actively choosing to change the way you think and the way you feel. So the first one is loving awareness, kind attention. The second is flipping the script, responding to negatives with positives. And the third is really cultivating a new state of being or way of thinking, because often we habitually just seem to think the way we do and feel the way we do. And we need to become conscious of the thoughts and feelings, and then conscious about changing those thoughts and feelings in order to do it. It links a little bit to Stoicism, that our initial thoughts aren't in our control, but our responsive thoughts very much are in our control. And it's something that we always have to do, like we are what we think about. So if we can start to produce these positive ways of thinking and feeling, as a result we will become more positive. So the only barrier to this is really attention and mindfulness, and that's why I'm combining these two, of cultivating and attention, because if we're lost in thought and we're not aware of our thoughts and feelings being repetitive, we can't then change them. So if we become aware, and then it gives the space to actively sit down and cultivate them, because you may sit down and say, right, I'm going to feel gratitude, luck, forgiveness. This isn't just self-compassion, all positive emotions. And instead of sitting down and doing that, you might be barraged by negative thoughts and feelings. So unless you have the mindfulness to notice, give space, and then choose and remember to do this, you won't do this. So the relationship between happiness and mindfulness is that you can put attention on what is meaningful and what is positive in your life by noticing that you're either lost in thought or you're going over negatives and negatives. So it's a choice. That's the third one. So on to the fourth, which will be noticing thoughts and feelings as thoughts and feelings, to engage with the other aspects of your life which will naturally make you happier. So the fourth tool is to notice thoughts as thoughts or feelings as feelings, and then connect or reconnect with experience in a more positive way. So experience is the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes, the touches, as well as the thoughts and feelings that sort of encompass our experience of the world. And as I said, our frame of mind and the way we interpret the world really determines the quality of our life. So what's stopping this is being lost in thought, and it's creating this overlay of experience on top of experience. So you're driving your car, and instead of feeling the steering wheel or looking at the trees or the buildings, you're thinking about a conversation from yesterday and all the ifs and buts and shoulds and coulds and woulds. And what mindfulness is doing is, there's this real correlation actually between mindfulness and happiness, because it's allowing us to put our attention onto what actually matters and actually makes us happy. So rather than this overlay, this like scrim of analysis and thoughts and thinking, which is actually blocking us from connecting with experience. I remind myself quite often, Notice thoughts as thoughts and feelings as feelings, so you can then reconnect with whatever you're doing. So I was at the theatre the other night with a group of friends, and rather than seeing the stage and the performance and hearing the music and the sound, that was still happening, but my attention was on a thought and a feeling from a couple of days ago. And that was really like taking the pleasure and the enjoyment out of the experience. And that's the same for any experience. So what you're trying to do is take attention and put it on to what's actually meaningful, rather than having it caught up on something. And therefore what you'll do is you'll notice using mindfulness, and then use mindfulness again to notice a thought as a thought. It'll diminish its power and its meaning, and then you'll be able to put full attention and awareness and connection onto whatever's happening. And this can only be a good thing. This only makes your day, your life, your experience, your connection with other people, your hobbies, your interests, anything you do, more meaningful, more pleasurable, more enjoyable, because you're connecting with it fully, rather than doing it but not being fully engaged in it because you're lost in thoughts and feelings. So this for me, other than the sort of psychological thoughts and feelings conundrum that we're all lost in most of the time, this is the real experiential, like sensory, like behavioral tool, which I think is the most powerful. Being able to reconnect with people, things, experiences, using mindfulness as the method of doing that. So let's go on to the last tool, which will be the effect this has on the brain itself. So the fifth and final tool would be to notice thoughts and feelings as thoughts and feelings, and shift our relationship to them. And this actually changes the brain. And whilst it's doing the benefit, knowing that it's doing the benefit to the brain is also an added benefit that I found massively reassuring and encouraging about this practice. So there's a difference between being identified with your thoughts and your feelings, or merely noticing them as thoughts and feelings. And if you can notice them as thoughts and feelings using a tactic like noting, where you're just saying thought or feeling, or you're literally seeing them in consciousness appear just as a thought and a feeling without that identification, you're not getting sucked into them in the same way, and you're not being overwhelmed by them, and it's actually shifting the part of the brain that's engaged with that experience. So most of the negativity appears in the amygdala, the root of the brain, the fight or flight area of the brain, and it's where a lot of stress, a lot of cortisol, a lot of negativity comes from. Whereas the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain which is aware. It's the noticing part of the brain. So if you can use noting or noticing to say, there's that depressed feeling again, or there's that feeling of anxiety again, just like you would in mindfulness, note it. Thought, feeling. You're breaking the sort of bond between thoughts and emotions, or emotions and your state, because you're just letting them be what they are, and they'll rise and they'll pass by themselves, or feel them fully and let them go. But shifting that relationship to them will literally change the way your brain deals with them. And I found this really liberating, and it's breaking that bond and changing that relationship, and literally seeing identification of a thought as different to just seeing a thought or just seeing a feeling. And it's helped me massively, and the book's got loads of absolute gems in there. But yeah, this one on breaking the identification, the relationship, will give you relief in real time. You'll be able to see the difference between an identified thought or a noticed thought or feeling, and then over time it will start to rewire, which is amazing, neuroplasticity, rewire the brain to being a more default state of happiness and kindness and well-being, because you're activating the prefrontal cortex more than the amygdala in response to thoughts and feelings. And that's just an amazing method that comes directly from mindfulness and has been tested now for quite some time. So let me know in the comments which one you think's the best, which one you'd like to use, and what you use to be happier or in a greater sense of well-being, whether that's a mindfulness technique or not. So to recap, There were 5 methods we used today to increase well-being, happiness, and a greater sense of being present. And they were this kind attention, this loving awareness, this prior condition that can be happy or a positive to receive all the negatives from. You've got meeting, the second was meeting negative thoughts and feelings with positive thoughts and feelings and flipping the script and countering them. Then you've got actively, intentionally cultivating not just compassion, but gratitude, forgiveness, and positive emotions if we choose and remember to do so. The fourth was connecting with experience more directly, being present and actually living our lives in a conscious way through being mindful and noticing that overlay of thoughts and feelings. And then the fifth one was changing our reference point to the thoughts and the feelings and seeing that actually amazingly changes the brain itself. So I really hope these have all been useful and you've got some methods and some tools to go out and live a more meaningful life, improve your mental health, have a greater sense of well-being, improve your happiness, your relationships. I believe all of these tools can help you some way in doing that, and it's been an absolute pleasure, and take care, my friends.